As I get closer into entering my 30s, I can't help but look back on how I spent my 20s. And this will be me just mainly rambling. I wanted to get my thoughts out and do a little self reflecting. But I've said this in the past, I'm always going to be my biggest critic, and that's one of my flaws. I'm always going to think and uphold myself to like the highest standard whenever I critique myself. And looking back from everything that I remember in my 20s, I don't really know how to feel about it. I don't really regret anything that I've done, but looking back, sure, there are many scenarios that I can play back in my head where I can think, what if I did this differently, or what if this happened? So this is really just a reflection, not really regrets that I have. I think everything happens for a reason, and there's a purpose why things happen. From my early 20s, I went the college route. I didn't really know what I wanted to do right after high school, so I kind of just copied what other people were doing, and I was going to college. So when I was getting towards the end of my college life and graduating with a degree, entering the real world, as people called it back then, I was so scared. I was so nervous. There was so many societal pressures of, do I get a job? What happens if I don't get a job in the field that I went to school for? Got to make my parents look happy. Societal pressures of like friends getting careers, things like that. And like thankfully, college it paid off for me. There was a lot of weight taken off my shoulders the last semester where I was able to get a job offer. And that was my first job. It wasn't crazy amounts of money. I wasn't like some drop shipping kid where you see people, drop shipping on Instagram right out of high school. They're already making millions of dollars a year and they're driving Lamborghinis and, driving Ferraris. But it was a good amount of money coming right out of college. It really boosted my confidence. I was making 50,000 a year, which looking back on it now, it doesn't seem like a lot of money because after taxes, deductions, contributing to like your 401k, you're probably only seeing like $20,000 of it hit your actual bank account. But I was spending money like I was a millionaire. It led me to spending money on travel. I would take trips to like Italy. I took a trip to Asia. And I got into debt a couple times. I was opening up credit cards because now I finally had a steady income where, I knew how much money hit my bank account every 2 weeks when I got paid. So I opened up some credit cards, financed some trips, and then also I was spending money like crazy. I would always have like the latest iPhone. I would have new clothes, new shoes. I would spend money eating out, drinking, spending money on just really anything material. Like even dating, I would take, girls out to pretty nice places, buy drinks. And looking back on that, it's all so stupid. I spent so much money, held myself back, and I was just wasting time. I was wasting money. I really lacked the self discipline coming out of college. I didn't have any goals that I set for myself after graduating. My only goal was to just finish college and get a job. So once I actually graduated, I didn't really have anything to look forward to necessarily. It was kind of just work, save up as much as I can, but also enjoy life and have fun. So, thankfully entering into my mid 20s, I was able to develop that self discipline, start focusing, setting goals for myself, either financially or just lifestyle wise. And I started taking work very seriously in my mid 20s. I was taking on safe jobs. I was started job hopping a little bit here and there to get a higher salary essentially. But there was a lot of opportunities that came my way where it was like startup companies and just riskier jobs. And looking back on it, I started job hopping around like COVID. So I think that's kind of too like made me a little bit more conservative. But I didn't take on risky jobs. I just took on like very safe corporate jobs where I would think, hey, you might not get laid off from this job if you take it. The startup, it'll be a little bit more risky, which is funny to say in 2025 and going into 2026. The job market is so trash. Like all these companies are doing layoffs, so really there is no loyalty to a job. But with one of the jobs that I took on, I moved to a different city. I didn't know anybody in the city, and this was the first time I was making six figures. I was getting paid over 100,000 a year, but the cost of living to live in this city was a lot higher than where I was moving from. So it was kind of just like a wash. But moving to this city, it felt like I was doing a reset on myself. I started setting goals, and financially, I started saving aggressively. I didn't really spend a lot of money like I did back home, where I had a lot of friends, go out, drink, party, travel a lot. I really like locked down, had self discipline, and just I was very conservative with how I was spending money. And I would say I'm a pretty conservative person to begin with. I don't really like to take on a lot of risks, and I do try to be conservative just to, almost have like a peace of mind in my head where it feels like I'm doing the right thing. But, I was saving heavily. And I think by the time I was 24 or 25, I made the first 100,000. And, from there, I was able to keep investing money. And it really just, blew up my savings account, my bank accounts, my brokerage accounts, and it really felt like I was making it. So I was prioritizing work over myself, and this kind of just led to me neglecting my physical health, neglecting my mental health. I started getting anxiety attacks and like panic attacks, which never happened before. And I was putting on weight, which, that sucks as well. In some days, it felt like I was almost developing like depression. And looking back to like see why my mindset shifted like this, one of the reasons was to just like please other people, right? Like making my parents proud with, a high paying job, and, showing that I'm able to like make it on my own, and just like the peer pressure of society where like everybody else is having a corporate job, people are moving to different cities to take on jobs, they're living their own life and like starting a new life, making new friends. I kind of just made work my identity, which looking back at it now, what if I didn't move to this city? Like, what if I just, stayed where I was at and, a little bit just more comfortable there, right? So in a way, even though I am like conservative with like taking risks and like, saving money and spending, very frugally, this was a big risk for me just to like move to a different city and, work another job similar to what I was doing in the past. And now in my late 20s, just shy of 30, really, I was able to fix my physical health, thankfully. I dialed it back from work, hit the gym more, and, started picking up running, which was good, both physically and mentally. I feel like running has helped me, like, just clear my head a lot of days. But I still do have anxiety here and there. I have the fear of the future, which I feel like it's pretty common for anybody, like, in their 20s and, really just starting out. You're always constantly thinking about the future and, like, every decision that you make today, how is it going to affect you in 5, 10, 15 years from now. Also, I'm still dating around, but I am more intentional with going on dates now and, meeting new people. Nothing really becomes too serious. A lot of the ones that do become serious, where it's just like a couple months or so. And, I do eventually want to get married, settle down, have kids. That is one of my goals. But I feel like just with how I've lived my life so far, I feel like I'm trying to be a perfectionist, and like that translates over into dating, where it's like I'm trying to find the perfect one that like matches like every single box. And a lot of people too, like women in their 20s, they have their checklist of things too, right? They want a guy that hits all their criteria. And really I'm trying to like readjust my mind, where it's like learning how to compromise. You're not going to find the perfect person, but being able to compromise and work with somebody, that's kind of what it's about. At least for my financial goals, I would say that I'm pretty well off financially for my age. I'm very thankful that I'm not struggling, but there is that fear of the future always in my head. Like, what if the money runs out? What if I make a mistake? What if, I get laid off, right? All these scenarios that you can just keep playing in your head, which I feel like it just causes and leads to more anxiety, right? There is that saying where it's like more money, more problems. And, for my financial situation, like I would say that money doesn't buy happiness. I can tell you that for a fact. It doesn't matter how much money you have, and the more money that you get, it really shows you who your real friends are, what your priorities are, and what you're willing to like spend money on now. Once you really kind of dial back and just lock in, make money, and once you save up a big enough like nest egg, and now you're able to essentially have like discretionary spending, you're really like, who am I going to spend the money on? What do I want to spend the money on? And it really starts opening up like new priorities and new things into your mindset. And thankfully, I am dialing back work. I'm building an identity where it's different things that I care about, where it's not just work. I'm able to spend time with friends and family, spend money on new experiences, getting to travel, and that's just something that I've always enjoyed. And I've been working remote for the last 3 years, which has helped me prioritize more of a work-life balance, where I can spend more time doing the things that I enjoy. When I was in the office, I felt like I wasted so much time commuting to work in the mornings, commuting to work in the afternoons, and trying to scramble when I get home to either make dinner, do laundry, try to hit the gym, just to wake up the very next day early to do it all over again and get ready for work. So definitely working remote has helped me, my mental health, in terms of just saving time and being able to prioritize what I really want to prioritize in life. But looking back at it all now, I know I didn't waste my 20s, and with my 30s coming up pretty quickly, I just wanted to do self reflection and what I felt like was mistakes in the past, just try to learn from that, reflect on that. And there's still a lot of skills that I want to create and improve on where, focusing on the future going forward, using these skills to get me where I want to go. One of the things that I still want to do is better self discipline and being able to spend time more wisely. I'm not productive 100% 24/7 every single day of the week, right? There are a lot of days where I still just want to lay around, do nothing. And then even weekends, maybe this is like the burnout from work. But even when I'm off and I'm not actually like working my regular job, I really just don't want to do anything. I have to like push myself in order to, go out or meet new people or just go to like restaurants, anything like that. I really just want to like doom scroll if I'm being 100% honest. But now I'm shifting my mindset to be more intentional about a lot of things and the decisions that I make, especially dating. That's one of the big goals that I have before hitting 30. I want to be able to get into a serious relationship and, taking dating even more seriously now where just going out, forcing myself to go out in social situations, meet new people, and just make a lot of connections. That's one of the big goals that I have for 2026 going forward. And I'm also trying to stop comparing myself to others. I feel like that's such a human, natural, like emotion or like trait to have is always comparing yourself to what other people are doing. And it's true, like there's days where I feel behind. I'll see posts where people are, flexing like Lamborghinis and, they're multimillionaires before they even graduate high school. And it's just like, man, what could I have done differently? Or is there anything that I can do now to like get to that point? But it's really just focusing on yourself and trying to avoid all of that and block out that noise. Comparison is the thief of joy, and that's the truth. You can always learn from others, but don't compare yourselves to them. Everybody's on a different journey. Things happen at a different time. Everybody has different circumstances. And one of the most valuable life lessons that I've learned this far is that time is the most important resource. You can always make more money, but you can never make more time. So it's really about just making every single day count.